Okay, subject: faith in God's purpose. Habakkuk chapter 2, verses 1 through 5. Good morning, Eileen. Look, Habakkuk is noted, Sister Hetty, as one of the minor prophets. The reason he is noted as one of the minor prophets is only because of the size of his book. It's not a large book. There's not many chapters in it. Good morning, Sister Francis. I enjoyed you last Sunday, just sitting in front of you Sunday night and just hearing you sing. Just a beautiful, beautiful voice, I'm telling you, over at Mount Pleasant for the Martin Luther King program. Good morning, Dorothy. And so with Habakkuk and the time that Habakkuk came out, this was a time when Judah was in trouble. Judah was in a lot of trouble. And so as we look at this unifying topic, waiting and trusting, and the subject, faith in God's purpose, in Habakkuk chapter 2, verse 1, it says this in the King James Version: I will stand. Now, look, this is Habakkuk speaking. And then we're going to hear God's response. He says, I will stand upon my watch and set me upon the tower, and will watch to see what he will say unto me, and what I shall answer when I am reproved. All right. Habakkuk, if you go back to chapter 1, it opens up talking about the burden which Habakkuk the prophet did see. So what had happened, the Lord had allowed Babylon, the small army, to raise up to power. Egypt had been rendered powerless. The Assyrians, who were very violent, they had been rendered powerless. And so Babylon, this small army, had been raised up to power. So they had come into Judah, and they were putting something on God's people. I'm talking about putting on, I'm talking about so much so that if you go back in some of the history and read some of the commentaries, it talks about how they would put nose rings into some of Judah, to some of the Judaites, put nose rings, rings in their nose, and tie a string around it, and that's how they would pull them around. Different things like that. So look, this stuff you see that folk doing with all this other kind of stuff. Look, this is nothing new. That stuff being, all you have to do is just study the history on where it originated, how it all came from, and that's just I just want to tell you how bad this Babylonian army, or the Chaldeans, Babylonian, same thing, how bad they were. All right. And so they were just coming through. And so the whole chapter 1, I'm going to tell you what blessed me, is Habakkuk came to God. Look, Pastor Connors, because he had a question, he had a concern. Because Habakkuk said, look, God, we are your people. Now you have allowed, because of our sins, you allowed Babylon to come in, and they are taking us by force and destroying us. And so he had a series of questions that he asked. The blessing was when Habakkuk asked the question, God answered him. That I'm talking about, that blessed me. I'm talking about, because the Lord, to have a question and to go to God with it, and then God responds to the question that you had as to why this thing is going on. So it's not a bad thing to question God. Okay. And he says, God, why do you show me all these iniquities of all of these Babylonians? I mean, they are coming in and killing, torturing, making slaves out of your people. God, why don't you do something about this? All right. And Lamika, look. He says that God responds to him. And he tells Habakkuk how bad and how terrible this Babylonian army is. He goes in and he tells them that their horses are like leopards. And I mean, and the men are so swift that ride the horses, and there is no way that you are going to be able to defeat them. And so then Habakkuk comes back with another series of questions. And that's going to lead up to open up the chapter about where we are today. So Habakkuk, in his second series of questions in chapter 1, verse 12, he says, art not thou from everlasting, O Lord, mine holy one? We shall not die. O Lord, thou hast ordained them for judgment. He's saying, now these are evil people, but you have allowed them to come in and judge us. He said, God, wait a minute. Now, how's that? Hold up, God. Hold up now. And so he goes on into all of these questions, all right? He says, they take up all of them with the angle. They catch them in their net. And so then he uses a comparison saying they are capturing us so easy, like a fisherman who gets out on the water and throws out a net. And then whatever he pulls in, we just capture. Just like that. I mean, like we are rendered powerless to it. Angela, he says, the last verse, chapter 17 of chapter 1 of Habakkuk, he said, shall they therefore empty their net and not spare continually to slay the nations? Are you going to let them continue? They done be in all these different places and rendering these nations captive. And now they have come to Judah and they have done the same thing. But God, there's a difference. We are your people. I am your spokesperson. I said all this to set this up for verse 1 because sometimes this verse is missed because verse 2 and 3 are quoted so much. Cousin Gladys, and look, this is the blessing. Habakkuk says, I will stand upon my watch. There's something there. And you have to go back towards Isaiah and especially Jeremiah. All right, the leader, all right, there was a wall built around the city. Okay. And so the watchman, the leader, would stand on the wall. The reason that the leader would stand on the wall is because when you are up higher, you have you can see further. So with the watchman standing on the wall, they would have their back towards their own city because the city would be able to take care of itself. But the problem is when the enemy gets inside of the camp. But as long as the watchman stayed on the wall and looked and made sure that if danger was coming, as I think Isaiah and Jeremiah talk about it, when the watchman would see danger coming, then they would turn back towards the camp and sound the trumpet. That get in position because the enemy is on the way. And so here Habakkuk says, I will stand upon my watch and set me upon the tower. So after, look, Joyce, this is what he does, Monica. After he asked all of this second series of questions, and he said, God, I know I'm asking you, why aren't you doing something? Why aren't you helping us? Why don't you do something? And then look, he says, after he gets finished his line of questions towards God, he says, I'm going to go up on the wall and I'm going to wait in my tower and I'm going to wait for an answer from you. So many times, this is where we mess up. We pray and we ask God, but we never wait for the answer. When you hear that, see that word stand, he says, I will stand upon my watch, meaning I will wait with patience for your answer. That says a couple of things because Habakkuk is saying, I'm patient, but also I am in expectation because I know I can do nothing in my own strength, but I've got to have some direction, some leading, some guiding from you, Lord. I will stand upon my watch and set me upon the tower and will watch to see what he will say unto me and what I will answer when I am reproved. All right, Sister Meg, look. All right, I'm going to be a little bit hard on like preachers and leaders here for just a minute, but I'm gonna help you out in the end. Sometimes what happens is, and God spoke this thing to me so clearly when I was walking this morning, just thinking on the lesson, is you have a leader, a watchman, standing on the wall in the tower. All right, they do it for two reasons. to see oncoming danger and be able to warn the people. And number two, they are in position to hear from God. See, what happens is the devil will send stuff into the camp like distractions, maybe fighting among one another inside the church. So then sometimes what happens is the leader comes off of the wall, climbs down out of the tower, gets down in the midst of what's going on the ground. When this happens, there is no one left in the tower. When the enemy sees that there is no one left in the tower, there is no one left to sound the trumpet that trouble is coming, then he sends his imps in. See, they can get in because no one is watching. See, that's the reason why the watchman, no matter what's going on, has to realize, she has to realize that they have the right people in place that is able to handle whatever infighting may be going on, Mr. Wesley. Got to trust that God is able to lead and guide the ones that's on the ground, so that the watchman who is on the wall, the leader, does not have to come down out of the tower, does not have to come down on the wall and get down on the ground. Because when he or she does, what happens is then the enemy, Brother Willie, comes in because there was no one to warn the people. And then you look up and you wonder, why is my house in a mess? Because there was something going on in your house, and instead of you still being vigilant and watching, making sure nothing came in your house. See, this is at church and at our home. So, Miss Odell, we're going to cover both places. So that's why you have to be a watchman as far as for your house about different things that try and come in and cause faith, that it tries to cause trouble. But when you are on the wall, because the wall in the tower is so high, you can see the trouble from so far off that you are able to prepare whoever is in the house for what is to come. And so many times we come down out of our tower and we try to fix it ourselves. And when we come down in the tower, we don't realize there is no longer a watchman. And then the enemy sends people in, plants people. Vicky, it plant them. And that's what happens at the church. See, that's why you have certain ministries and different things set up in the church, because the pastor can't do everything. The deacons can't do everything. The trustees can't do everything. The ushers can't do everything. See, everybody has a specific job. All right. And so what happens is sometimes your ministry may not be trusted to do that job. And Mr. Neva, when that happens, if our ministry is not trusted to do our job, and then the leader comes down off the wall, then we have opened up ourselves for the devil to come in and infiltrate. And then the devil is down there in the middle of it. And then once it seems like the trouble has been fixed and you go on the tower, when you look again, you don't see any trouble coming, because the trouble now, the real trouble, because that was only small fires right there, and you came down out of the tower. Now when you go back up, look and see, Nutella, this is it. You don't see anybody. The reason why you don't see anybody now is because when you came down, they came in unaware. God Almighty. And see in the New Testament, I think it's the book of Jude and some of those others talk about those who came in unaware. And so I know in one of them, I think one of the answers where Paul or one of them said, how did they get in? If the watchman was on the tower and was looking for trouble coming, so that he or she could spot it and let the people know that you need to get ready because this is coming. And God is so gracious that he will lift up a standard when the enemy comes in like a flood. Okay, so they are, and see, this is what Habakkuk said. This is why I have so much respect for this prophet Habakkuk. Because when he asked God all these series of questions, he says, I'm going to go on the wall and I'm going to go in the tower. And he says, I'm going to wait. That's another reason you have to be in your position. Like as leaders, leaders have to be in the tower. See, God is not going to compete with all this other noise. All right, why would the God that created the heavens and the earth, why would he have to compete with all the other noise? See, that's why personally we have to get by ourselves to hear from God. Get by ourselves and read the word, pray, get away from all that other noise. Why should God have to compete with all that other noise? See, when you're away from everything like that, see, you in the tower, you in that place watching. You in that place where God can speak and you can hear clearly. So Habakkuk said, the first thing I need to do since I ask all these questions is I have to position myself and be ready for the answer, because I know God is going to answer because I prayed and I asked him. And so now he's ready. He says, I'm going to sit here and watch and wait. Janelle, Habakkuk said, I'm going to sit here and watch and wait. What I shall answer when I am reproved. He said, when God gives his answer to the complaint that I have sent to him, I need to prepare myself to be ready. Because sometimes we ask God for certain things and then the answer is no. And sometimes we'll say, I'm still waiting on God. And baby, sometimes we ain't waiting on God. God already answered. He said no, but we just didn't want to accept. Or God might say, not right now. So he says Habakkuk got in position first to hear. Look at Habakkuk chapter 2, verse 2. And the Lord answered me and said, write the vision and make it plain upon tables, that he may run that readeth it. Wait, hold up. Because look, Felicia, right here, so many times I have heard this thing, but to see it really in the raw manner that it is right here. You see what happened when Habakkuk first positioned himself away from everything else. He pulled even away from the trouble in chapter 1, he talks about the iniquity that the Lord is allowing him to see. All his people being slaughtered and all this kind of stuff. He pulls himself, Apostle Anderson, he pulls himself away from all of that. Look, Greenfield, he gets up on the wall in the tower. He is in position to hear from God. And look at what Habakkuk 2:2 says. And the Lord answered me. This is the recipe right here for how you get an answer to your prayers. Sometimes we don't want to get in position to receive the answer. We got to get away from the TV. All right. So Jackie, we got to get away from them phone calls that people calling and just dumping stuff on us like we the landfill. Sometimes you got to get away from all that because you have prayed and asked God for something, and you got to be in a position to receive, to hear clearly the answer. So that's the first thing. That was the result of Habakkuk being in position. The Lord answered him. All right, this is what the Lord said. Write the vision and make it plain. Look, Mr. Tinker, see, this is important. He tells Habakkuk, because Habakkuk wants to know, God, what is going on here? Look, these people are evil. You are allowing me to see them take your people in bondage, slaughter them. You done put nose rings and everything else in their nose. You pulling them around. Y'all are just. He's saying we are just slaves. God, what are you gonna do about this? The Lord clears his throat and says, "Write the vision and make it plain." See, it seems like God to us now, God would have said, get the boys together. I want y'all to go up under a juniper tree. And at this time, I'm going to tell you to do this, this, or this. That's not what God said. God told Habakkuk to write the vision and make it plain. Meaning that God is going to give him a vision for what needs to be done. But in order for the vision to be carried out, Habakkuk has to write it plain. And sometimes this is where we get in the woods, we get in the mud. It needs to be plain. If God gives you a vision for your house, when you get the people in your house together and explain it to them, you got to make it plain. See, you can't be using all these big words and it's like God just speak to you and nobody else, and God can't say anything else to anybody else, and so you got to act all high and lofty and all this kind of stuff. See, he says, write the vision and make it plain. We're going to see why that is so important. We're going to see why it's so important. He says, upon tables, and that reminds us, that goes back to Exodus when let's see, when Moses had the 10 commandments and God, he went up top Mount Sinai and God put them on the tables. All right. He says, write the vision and make it plain. So if God gives you a vision, the vision is not just for you. See, if the vision is just for you, it could have came from God, but we talking about something bigger than that. We talking about the way God moves, the way God operates. He said, so write the vision and make it plain. That means we have to be able to interpret what God has said, and we have to be able to give the information out in a way that the people are able to understand completely. This is the direction that God said go. He said it has to be plain. All right. See, I just don't need to come to you and say, God said this. And and God said it, and that settles it, and that's just it. No, This scripture says, write the vision and make it plain upon tables. Sister Minnie, he said, look, this thing has to be written out. It has to be legible so that it can be read and it can be interpreted. And see, that is so important. Why is that important? See, that's why I love this class right here, because y'all always ask the right questions. He says, write the vision and make it plain upon tables, that he may run that readeth it. Wait a minute. So that means that God may have given Habakkuk the vision, but Habakkuk can't carry the vision out by himself. So that means it's going to take the rest of the people for the vision to carry it out. And so if that's the case, then that means it needs to be legible when it is written on the tablets or on the table, or when it is explained, it needs to be crystal clear so that when the one comes along and they read it, they will be able to understand it. Why do you need them to understand it? Because they are the ones that are going to be the ones that are going to have to run this vision in order to make it come to pass. You can't just be blanketing stuff. Say, God said, and I mean, there's no, it's not plain. It's not to the point. He gave Habakkuk specific instructions. Write the vision and make it plain upon the tables. He said, now when you write this on the table, he said, you need to write it just like I gave it to you. If I was gracious enough to speak to you from heaven and give you the vision plainly so that you understand it, you need to be gracious enough with my word to write it down so that others can understand it just the way I allowed you to understand it. Because God is the creator of everything. God can speak words that we have never heard before, don't know the definition of it, and would not even be able to define it. But yet, God, I'm using air quotes here, dumbs it down so that Habakkuk can understand plainly and clearly what needs to happen. And now it's Habakkuk's job to write it plainly on the tables, because what I have brought to you, Habakkuk, there ain't no way you can do it by yourself. And this is why sometimes you have leaders, pastors who burn out and quit, and sometimes want to throw in the towel. Leaders just want to give up because they're trying to do it by themselves when God has never commissioned them to do it by themselves. If you think you got a vision from God and you can do it by yourself, baby, you need to recheck it. Because nowhere in history has God just took one person and gave them a vision and they were able to carry out the vision by themselves. It takes everybody. I don't care if you're talking about church, at your house, it's going to take everybody, even in your house, pitching in and helping. That's why the vision has to be clear. It has to be plain. He says that he may run that readeth it. Look, he said, if you do this, Habakkuk, the way that I'm telling you, when they read it, they ain't going to have no preconceived notions about it. God says, if you have it plain and clear, you know what they going to do? He said, they going to run with it. No, they ain't going to wait around. They ain't going to be saying, I'll do it next week and all. When it is clear, he says they will read it, and after they read it, baby, because they got such an understanding of it, and God has already prepared their hearts to receive it, you know what the result's going to be? They're going to run with it. Verse 3. He says, for the vision is yet for an appointed time, but at the end it shall speak and not lie. Though it tarry, wait for it, because it will surely come. It will not tarry. Hey, Terrell, this is what get me in trouble right here too. We have to be patient. All right. He says, for the vision is yet for an appointed time. So there is an appointed time for what God has already set in motion. This is the problem. The vision and what God is going to do is already at the place. The thing is, we haven't gotten to that place yet. So until we get to that place, until enough of the settings are raising of the sun in the east and setting in the west, until enough of them happen and we get there, we have to be patient. He says, for the vision is yet for an appointed time. So just because God tells you and it don't happen in the morning, it don't happen at night, just like with the farmers getting ready to get back in the field. All right? And most of the time, what farmers would do, especially those that planted gardens, on Good Friday, they be planting their seeds. On Friday. They don't go back out there Saturday morning looking for a harvest. They don't even go back out there Saturday morning looking for it to be come up out of the ground yet. It is a process. So God says, yes, I told you, I gave you the vision. You give it to them and let them run with it. And yeah, when they start running with it, they might not see it. He said, but the vision is yet for an appointed time. There is an appointment for that thing to happen. That's why when God tells us something, when God gives us vision, we have got to hold on to that thing with faith, because the devil will try with all his might to try and pull it away from you. Oh, God done forgot about that. Oh, God ain't going to do that for you. If God was going to do it, he'd be done. If God was going to do it, why all this other stuff happened? It is yet for an appointed time. And baby, when that time comes, you can get ready, because you're going to reap the harvest. Why? Because God said it. For the vision is yet for an appointed time, but at the end it shall speak. He says at the end it's going to speak. So this is what it tells me. God's going to give the vision. Write the vision and make it plain. Once God gives the vision, it's going to get quiet. See, this is what, God, thank you. I just saw that. Thank you, Holy Ghost. So when God gives the vision, after he gives the vision, God going to turn mute on. God going to go mute on us. He ain't going to say nothing. This is what he says. For the vision is yet for an appointed time. Miss Maggie, he said, but at the end it shall speak. So he says it's not going to speak until the end. Yeah, you got the vision, you started running with it, but you ain't hearing nothing. You ain't seeing nothing. But guess what? You got to keep running. Because he says, at the end it shall speak. See, it ain't going to speak in between. See, he spoke when he gave us the vision. He spoke then. So we supposed to be running with it. And while we running with it, it's going to get quiet. It's going to be dark. It's going to get lonely sometimes. But don't worry about it. At the end, it's going to speak. All the running that you, God knows I feel it. I like to mess it up. Tinker, they like to got me again. I like to mess it up. The Holy Ghost is quick, fast, sharp. Then any two-edged sword, cutting asunder, cutting in and out. Lord have mercy. I see that thing. Lord have mercy, I see it. So look, when he gives the vision, it's gonna get quiet. But just because it gets quiet, look, he has not given up. He has not forgotten about you. He has not done it. That ain't what he did. Tinker said, do it. God, I can't. Thank you. I needed somebody to tell me that. God knows I wanted to do it. Lord have mercy. He said, it's going to get quiet. But when it get quiet, he said, don't worry about that. He said, because it's going to speak at the end. At the end is when it's going to speak. See, you don't need it to speak in the middle. You need it to speak at the appointed time. And that's what messes us up. Sometimes we want stuff to speak out of season. And that's why if a plant comes and grows out of season and the frost hits it, it will kill it and it will not bear fruit. So that's why we have to wait on the appointed time. Woo! Seed time, and I told y'all I was ready for y'all this morning. Seed time and harvest. Seed time and harvest. Wait for the appointed time. While I'm there, let me put this plug back in. Some of y'all might have got in here a little bit later. Aunt Fiend, I'm glad you tapped in this morning. Look, next Sunday, we're going to be coming on at 9 a.m. 9 a.m. next Sunday. 9 a.m. Look, he said, write the vision and make it plain upon tables that he may run that readeth it. For the vision is yet for an appointed time. But at the end it shall speak. Stop expecting that thing to speak while you running with it in the middle of it. But when the appointment time, when the time gets ready, he is going to speak. The vision is going to come right before your eyes. And you're going to see that all the running that you've done and everything that you've done, all the sleepless nights, everything that you've been through, you're going to see that it's worth it, because at the end, the vision, Lord have mercy, is going to speak. Meaning you're going to see the results. You're going to see the fruits of your labor. I got to hurry up and get out of here. He says it's going to speak and not lie. Look, if God said it, baby, you can bank on it. If he has said it, you can just bank on it. Look, it might have been 5 years ago and you waiting. But baby, when he gets to that appointed time, and see, you never know when the appointed time is. That's why you can't get up in the morning or the day and say, I'm throwing in the towel. I'm through with it. See, that's why you can't quit. You got to keep pushing. You got to keep the faith. I'm trying to, K-Song. You got to keep the faith. He says, but it will surely come. It will not tarry. It won't delay. When look, God is our on time God. Yes, he is. He may not come when you want him. I just heard y'all say it. He may not come when you want him, but he's right on time. When it shows up, it's going to be right on time. You may have been through the fire, through the flood, but when he shows up, it's going to be right on time. Don't give up, baby. Don't give up. Look, that's it. That's all I got for y'all. I said I was going to try to get out here at 10:30. Let me read these last two verses because look at the subject. Faith in God's purpose. Waiting and trusting. We got to be trusting God while we're waiting. We got to have faith in God's purpose because God has a purpose and a plan for each one of our lives. Therefore, we have to wait. We have got to keep the faith while we are waiting. So then, here God goes on to speak about the Babylonians. He said, "Behold, his soul which is lifted up is not upright in him, but the just shall live by his faith." He said, "Look, I know they coming in. I know they defeating. I know they doing all this." God says, "I see them." God says, "I see it. I see everything you're going through." He says, "But because their souls are lifted up," and God does not like the proud. He resisted the proud. He's saying it's the only one that's going to make it is the ones that live by faith. He says, "But the just shall live by his faith." Where is your faith? If your faith is in God, that situation can't kill you because God said the just shall live. So that means you shall live and not die. That situation is not going to kill you. Andre, I'm trying to help us all. That situation is not going to break you. You are not going to lose your mind over that because your faith is in God, and the just shall live by their faith. And so where is your faith? So if your faith lies in the true and living God, that situation can't break you, can't kill you. It might cause you to have some pains every now and then, some sleepless nights and all that, but it cannot overpower, it cannot take you out because the just shall live by their faith. And if your faith is in God, with God, all things are possible. You plus God are a majority. Verse 5 of Habakkuk chapter 2, and we're going to get out of here. "Yes, also, because he transgresseth by wine. He is a proud man." See, God resists the proud. See, he was talking about how the Babylonians, he allowed them to come in, and they done defeated Egypt, done defeated the Assyrians. Now they're in Judah, wreaking havoc, tearing stuff up. "But because he transgresseth by wine," he takes all of his, all the stuff that he has took from people that they went in and defeated, and and he's boastful about it. He says, "Neither keepeth at home who enlargeth his desire as hail." All right. He says, "They opened their throats wide as Shiloh or as hail." See, broad and wide is the way that leadeth to destruction, but narrow is the way that leadeth us to God. He says he cannot be satisfied. See, they won't satisfy defeating Egypt. They won't satisfy defeating the Assyrians. Now they trying to defeat everybody. Almost remind me of something my daddy said about he knew somebody that said, "I don't want to own all the land. I just want to own all the land that's beside my land." So in other words, he was saying he still wanted to own all the land. And so it can never be satisfied. Look, and Reeby, that's why God has put something so in us that we are so satisfied even when we don't have everything that we desire to have. We can still be satisfied in him. He says, "But gathereth unto him all nations and heapeth unto him all people." So he was trying to take the whole world by storm, this king. He was trying to do it. Lord have mercy. That's right. Pat, we just got to let God do this thing, and it's hard, but sometimes we want to put our hands in it. Sometimes we want to do it our own selves. Look, we got to keep faith in God's purpose. While we're waiting, we got to continue to trust him. Look, next Sunday,